Thanks Cooking with Tammy. Today I'm going to show you how to make the most delicious, flavorful, melt in your mouth pot roast ever. Guys, definitely a great recipe. So with that being said, let's get started. Usually when I do a tutorial, I always give precise recipe measurements. But because we're going to be dealing with a pot roast, and as we all know, pot roasts come in so many different size variations, it would defeat the purpose for me to give precise measurements. So be sure to watch closely to see how much of each spice is being used. The tutorial will definitely provide you with the ingredients being used for the pot roast. The ingredients that we're going to need are tomato paste, smoked paprika, Worcestershire sauce, dried parsley flakes, ground white pepper or black pepper, onion powder, sage, beef broth, marjoram spice, dried rosemary leaves, barbecue sauce, salt, sherry or red cooking wine, 2 medium onions, 2 bay leaves, all-purpose flour for dredging the pot roast as well as to thicken the gravy. And I'll be using a 5.5 pound pot roast. Using cold water, we're going to start by washing the pot roast, placing the pot roast into a large bowl. We're also going to add a couple tablespoons of salt. Using my hands, I'm going to massage and remove all of the impurities from the pot roast. During the final rinse, I'm going to allow the pot roast to remain in the water for about 15 minutes. After 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to give the pot roast a final rinse with clean water and then pat it dry with a paper towel. Using a sharp paring knife, place slits on both sides of the meat. Placing slits into the meat will assure that all of the seasoning will penetrate deeply throughout the pot roast, assuring that it will have great flavor. We're going to start with seasoning the pot roast. Lightly sprinkle in salt on both sides. Ground white pepper or ground black pepper. Using our fingers, we're going to massage it into the pot roast. Repeating the same process on both sides as well. Adding the onion powder, smoked paprika, adding the ground sage. Marjoram spice and rubbing it into the meat as well. Packing on a couple rosemary leaves onto the pot roast. Adding the Worcestershire sauce. Be very generous when adding the Worcestershire sauce. And as I mentioned before, placing the slits into the pot roast is really going to help with the penetration of the Worcestershire sauce. And last but not least, I'm going to add dry parsley flakes. Covering the pot roast with saran wrap, I'm going to allow it to marinate in the refrigerator for about 2 to 3 hours. After about 2 to 3 hours, we're going to remove the pot roast from the refrigerator, removing the saran wrap, Taking the all-purpose flour, we're going to dredge both sides of the pot roast. The all-purpose flour will assist with giving the pot roast a nice brown color. Once the pot roast is covered in flour, I'm going to move on to sauteing the onions and the red bell pepper. Adding a little olive oil to the pan, I'm going to add the onions and the red bell peppers. Using a deep skillet to saute the veggies is not a bad idea either. Moving the veggies back and forth in the pan, within 5 minutes the veggies should be all sauteed. Adding a pinch of salt to season the onions. Seasoning the onions and the red bell peppers with adobo to give it a little extra flavor. Giving everything a quick stir to combine all of the ingredients. After about 5 minutes, this is what the sauteed veggies look like. Setting the veggies aside, I'm going to start the browning process for the pot roast. I started off by adding a couple tablespoons of oil to the pot, followed by adding the pot roast. After the pot roast is brown on both sides, we're going to remove it from the pot and place it into the roasting pan, along with the sauteed onions and red bell peppers. Adding the entire container of beef stock to the pan. Not only is beef stock used to make gravy, but it makes a great flavor enhancer as well. Taking 2 chicken or beef bouillon cubes, break it into small pieces and add it to the pan. Adding 2 bay leaves for enhanced flavor. Covering with aluminum foil, we're going to allow the roast to cook at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 hour. Cooking the roast at 350 for 1 hour is going to create somewhat of a slow cooking process. After 1 hour, I'm going to adjust the temperature to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. For the final hour, I'm going to adjust the temperature to 400 degrees Fahrenheit and allow it to finish the cooking process at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. During the last 30 minutes of the cooking process, I'm going to add the white potatoes as well as the carrots. Covering once again with aluminum foil and placing it back into the oven. Alright, so this pot roast is pretty much finished, but in order to thicken up the gravy, taking about 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, I'm going to add about 1.5 tablespoons of water, continuously stirring it to assure that there isn't any lumps. To jazz up the slurry a bit, I'll be adding barbecue sauce, as well as tomato paste. Stirring everything to combine all of the ingredients. If you find that the slurry is a little bit too thick, just add a little bit of water at a time, giving it a quick stir once again to make sure that the consistency is nice and smooth. Adding the slurry to the gravy. Be sure to stir to incorporate both mixtures. Place the pot roast back into the oven for an additional 15 to 20 minutes to allow the gravy to thicken up. After about a total of 3 hours, as you can see, our pot roast is now finished. Our gravy has thickened up and is nice and rich. And this is the texture of the meat that we're going for, being able to break it apart using a fork or any type of utensil. It's juicy, it's moist, and most importantly, very delicious. Guys, definitely give this recipe a try. It's guaranteed to please any crowd, whether it be the holidays or a dinner for 2, or if you're just looking for comfort food. It's not over seasoned, it's just the right amount of flavor. There's nothing better than meat being so tender that it just literally melts in your mouth. As always guys, thanks for cooking with Tammy. Subscribe to stay updated, and most of all, enjoy.